Hello and welcome to another edition of Scott Nagel's Tennis Tips. I'm Scott Nagel, bringing you a tip today from Lisbon, Portugal. Today's tennis tip will be covering some of the aspects of poaching in doubles. Poaching is where the player at the net intercepts a ball that's hit either towards their partner on the baseline or in that general direction. The basic formations for poaching are when one player is at the net and one player is further back. This happens when the partner's serving, and I might be the partner at the net and I can intercept the ball down the middle. Or if my partner's returning serve from the baseline, I'm further back. But there'll be opportunities here for me to move forward and poach a ball that's hit through the middle. And any situation where I have one player up and one player that's staying back and a ball comes dead through the middle, the net player can intercept that ball and poach that shot. The theory of when and how to poach is the subject of many publications and a lot of online video. Today I will cover just a few concepts for when the serving team is poaching, and these can be adapted to the other poaching situations mentioned earlier in this video. It's important to discuss with your partner the different options for poaching, and that you both even agree to use poaching throughout the match. One of the first things you'll want to decide with your partner is the signals for poaching. While the poacher is up at the net player will put a signal behind their back. So the three signals we typically use are an open hand, which means I'm going to poach, a closed hand, which means I'm going to stay, I'm not going to poach, and a single finger, preferably your index finger. And this means I'm going to throw a fake as if I were poaching, but I'm actually going to stay in the same spot and hopefully bring the return in my direction. I want to do these signals behind my back, and my service partner needs to acknowledge they've seen the signal and also they agree with the signal. So I might put the signal that I'm going to poach behind my back, and the service partner should say yes or got it, or they might say no and they want to see a different signal from me. They want to go from a poach to a fake poach. You can also have the signal for where to serve. So in the ad court here, I would use a pinky, which would mean to serve down the center of the court, down the tee, at the player's body, which would be an index finger, and then a thumb would be out wide. You can decide any type of signals behind your back with your partner, any signal that works for you. These are just the standards. It's key that the communication is there so that the server does acknowledge or change the signal. If you don't hear the acknowledgement, you want to make sure you don't turn around and give away the signal to the opponent, just to make sure the server is aware of the signals. If I don't hear an acknowledgement from my partner, I'll assume they did not get the message, and therefore I'm just going to stay. This again is something we can discuss before the match begins, so there's no confusion that this happens when you're playing. We also want to discuss what would happen in the event of a spontaneous poach. So let's suppose I give the signal of stay behind my back, my partner acknowledges that I'm not going to poach, but then the ball is just too inviting. I like the shot too much, I'm going to cut over and I'm going to spontaneously poach. So that needs to be, in a sense, approved by your partner before the match begins, that these things are going to happen throughout the match. Also, you want to discuss whether it's a spontaneous poach or a planned poach, the role of the server, what they'll do after they serve and after you're moving over for the poach. Of course, if there's no poach, if you call a stay or a fake, the server is going to do what they normally do, which is typically to move forward, or some teams stay back. So you want to know that your partner is going to cover the other side, if that's your plan, and whether they're going to come up and take the net with you, or whether they're going to stay back on the baseline. Typically in professional tennis, you'll see the poach happen, and the servers will not only cover the other side, but advance towards the net so they can play the net as a team. You should also have some discussion of when you're going to poach as a team. Whether you're going to poach just on first serves or also use it against the second serve, which might depend on how good the second serve is. Other things you might discuss is at what time you're going to poach. So I think a good idea is to try to poach early in the match on the first couple of points. The receiving team's going to be least expecting of a poach. It also sets the tone for the match to say, hey, this team is going to be aggressive the whole time. You might decide whether or not you're going to poach at more risky times, such as being down, love 30. Is that a good time for you and your partner to poach, or on key points such as 30-all? I think anytime you're down love 40 and you're losing the game and there's not much hope of winning that game, it's a good idea also to try to poach. But these are things you want to discuss with your partner so you have some agreement. Also discuss with your partner where to serve. I think great serves for poaching are serves at the opponent's body, so the returning player is jammed, or ball up the center of the court. This typically brings the return back up the middle of the court, and that would make it easy for the net player to poach. Serves out wide can also be effective, but the difficulty there is you're giving your opponent more angle to hit their return. So these are good discussions with your partner. There's a lot of variables to decide here with your partner, and it would depend on how quick you move, how good your partner is at serving, and how strong the returners are. All these things are factored in, and you can change them throughout the match to better suit the poaching situation. When to poach is a subject of great debate. I've heard a lot of different theories about when the net player should actually try to cut off the ball down the middle, when they should actually time leaving for their poach. This depends on so many factors, and one of the first things you might think about when you're at the net is how fast the serve is. If you've got a really fast serve, that's going to enable you to go a little sooner for the poach because the time's less. If the serve is very slow and you go a bit early, the receiving team is going to have all day to look at where you've gone and hit a ball the other direction. You'll also want to consider how good the returning team is and how close they are to the baseline. Whether they stay further back, giving them a lot of time to return. You might wait a little longer to poach in that situation. If they're up a little closer to the baseline or in front of the baseline, that's going to limit the amount of time you have to poach. You'll need to go a little bit early. It also might depend on your own speed. Some players are very quick, very fast at the net, and I think that it's optimal to wait as long as you can before you poach. So poaching early will often help the returning team see that you're going and maybe make a directional change. So if you can wait a little bit longer and still get over and cover that shot because you're fast, then that's a terrific plan, to wait as long as you can before going. If, however, you're going to call the signals, you remember earlier, the fake poach, this is something you want to do a little bit early. So I want to fake poach quickly, use your body and your racket. It's not good enough to just stick my foot out. That may not be noticeable by the receiving team. I actually want to use my racket too. You're trying to create a visual movement in the eye of the returner. So you draw their eye that, hey, this player's going to go. And what you want in a fake poach is typically the returner to hit the ball back to you at the net. So I'm looking to get the ball up here at the net from my fake poach. So this is something I want to do early, so that telling them in advance, I'm going, but you're really not going, you're staying there and trick them into hitting the ball to you. So all those different factors you're going to take in consideration for when you're going to poach. I think somewhere between the bounce of the ball and the player making their stroke is when you're going to go. It just would depend on those factors added in. You don't really ever want to go before the ball bounces or as it's bouncing. If you can catch the player committing to their return, that's a great time to go. But somewhere between the bounce and the contact of the receiver is the time you're going to go. And again, depending on those many factors. So I'll conclude with a couple tips on how to improve the net player's ability to get the poach. So if I'm giving my partner the signal that I'm going to poach and where I want them to serve, I want to move a little bit more forwards as the serve is going in the court. So let's suppose the serve is coming down the tee. I'm going to split step right before I'm going to poach. So as I do that split, I'm also going to land on the foot away from where I'm going to split. So I'll do my split and I'll be landing with my right foot down so that I can move quickly to my left. Look for more tips from Scott Nagel Tennis on different poaching concepts, including where the player at the net would aim the ball in the variety of situations they would be in at the net. Stay tuned for more tips on Scott Nagel Tennis. We'll see you on the court.